Hello and welcome to this video. Today I wanted to show you how I once played against the Smith-Morra gambit. It's a very annoying gambit in the Sicilian defense. You know, you come prepared with all of your Sicilian variations, whether it's knight or dragon or whatever else. And then white just plays the Morra or Smith-Morra gambit. When they have all the preparations, they know their lines, and you are out of your favorite variations. So what do you do then? Many coaches or authors would advise you to completely switch gears and just play the Alapin variation of the Sicilian. On the other hand, this might not be to everyone's liking because the Alapin is essentially equal, while Smith-Morra should be better for black if he's well prepared. So I wanted to suggest something different, something else. I wanted to navigate the game into the typical Sicilian structures, but without giving white their gambit, their preparations. Let's find out. So I wanted to demonstrate this idea based on my game that I played in the Oxford Shared League against Ian Bush. Well, Ian, if you are watching this video, all the best to you and hi. So the game was started with e4, c5, the Sicilian defense. But now we move quickly into the Smith-Morra gambit with this pawn sacrifice, d4 and then c3. And now, as I said, the best line for black is just to take the pawn on c3 and say, okay, I'm ready to take the bull by the horns. Please, white player, show me what you've got. But again, this is complicated, this is tricky, and to be fair, it is dangerous for both sides. So instead, my recommendation, and what I played in this game, is just to push this pawn. Push the pawn to d3. As black, we will no longer have the material advantage of a pawn, but the game will be very much like a typical Sicilian defense. And this is what black wanted in the first place. So white took, and we just developed normally. Knight c6, knight f3, d6, h3, maybe a bit too timid. Maybe white should have played something more, just normal development of pieces instead. But okay. And we go g6. Now c4, well, white had a problem with this knight. It had to be developed somehow, so making a room on c3 for this knight looks like a good idea. But we continue with development. Bishop g7, white castled, knight f6, knight c3. That looks quite normal. And this is what we wanted, right? We wanted to get a normal looking Sicilian defense. None of this Smith-Morra nonsense, just normal Sicilian. And now in this position, which kind of started to look like a Maroczy bind, with the pawns on c4 and e4, again having full control over the d5 square, I had this kind of, well, original for me idea. I played the move knight to d7. What I wanted to do now is, if white allows, I wanted to take on c3, completely damage the pawns on the queen side, and then, you know, play in the style of the Nimzo-Indian, just put my knight on n5, maybe then play the pawn to b6, bishop to a6, everything looking at this weak pawn on c4. That was my idea, but white did not allow it. He played bishop d2, so now if I capture the knight, white will recapture with the bishop, and none of those considerations none of my ideas about the doubled weak c-pawns is possible anymore. Okay. No problem at all. I cannot do that. I just castle instead. And we continue with pretty much normal development. Rook c1, and now, as is typical in these structures, black will play on the dark squares. So that's what I did. I put my knight on c5 with the idea that I will next play a5, securing this knight on c5 because white will no longer be able to play b4 to chase it away. Now, but please notice in the meantime that my last move attacks the bishop on d3, so white simply moved it back to safety. And I continued with my development, bishop e6. This is a pretty normal looking position in the Sicilian defense. Okay, white put the knight on d5. And it's a mistake, because I can just take the pawn for free on b2. Thank you very much for this gift. Now I'm really up a pawn, even though the gambit has not been played. All right, so I am attacking the rook on c1. White attacks my rook on f8 instead. So I move it to safety. Also, as a side effect, I am now overprotecting the pawn on e7. And now white had to really do something with his rook, so he moved it to c2. And now it's time for my bishop to come back, and it came back all the way to h8. Probably this wasn't ideal. I could have just simply put it on g7 and accept this exchange of the bishops right away. As you will see in the game later on, my bishop makes many moves along this diagonal, up and down. Maybe there is no need for it. Maybe I should have just exchanged them right away. Anyway, white played now the rook to d2, putting more pressure along the d file, potentially. And now I, after long thinking, decided to take this knight. It's not an ideal move, because now I am giving the bishop pair to my opponent. But on the other hand, this knight on d5 was very strong, so I decided to get rid of that. It wasn't the best move though. C takes d5, and now my knight goes to e5, and now same considerations. Now white decides that my knight in the center is too strong, so it trades it away, and we arrive with this position. And if you were white, what would you play now? Well, you have those nice pawns in the center that take a lot of central space, and now there is this bishop that acts as a hook, so it's just natural to continue expanding with your pawns with tempo. So the move f4 has been played, and I really like this move for white, gaining even more space in the center and on the king side. And now my bishop goes back to g7, and finally the trade happens, and we arrive at this position. Now, quite naturally, white wanted to push forward with those pawns, trying to use this to his advantage. So he played the move f5, trying to open up the position, also trying to open up the position for his bishop. I will naturally want to keep the position closed, but this move was probably not the best for white. White should have played king h2 and just slowly prepare this f5 advance with repositioning his pieces first. But anyway, I played queen b6. Now white played the rook to f2. Mind you, I had the discovered ideas, discovered checks here. So by putting the rook, first of all, white is able to double up on this f file, but it's also blocking the potential discovered check. So I guess it's a reasonable move. Now I'm repositioning my knight to e5, so I started with d7, and now white pushes even more pawns, g4. And as I said before, white is trying to open up the position because he has a very dangerous pressure against my king. What I want to do? I want to keep the position as closed as possible. I don't want to open lines. I don't want to open diagonals. So g5 seems reasonable. I like this move g5 for another reason, by the way, because I'm trying to fix the white's pawn on the light squares. And as you can see, all of white's pawns are now on the light squares, meaning that this bishop is very weak. So that's another advantage of playing the move g5. But white will carry on. h4, what do? h6. We are just trying to keep everything closed and everything fixed with my pawns on the dark squares. So now we exchange. And now, if you look at this position, if I am only able to put this pawn on f6, I will have a beautiful pawn chain all on the dark squares, while white pawn will be all on the light squares. This will be a positionally, strategically winning position for black. So what? White will not allow me to do this. f6 by white. It's a pawn sacrifice, but position of my king is very shaky now. It starts to look really scary, actually. Okay, what do you do? Take the pawn first, and now white prepares the attack. So by moving the king to g2, first of all, white steps out of this pin, and now also prepares to take the h-file with his rooks. What do you do as black? Well, you go for the h-file yourself first. Rook h8. Very good move. Now, white wants to bring the queen to the attack. Queen d2 is a good move, putting pressure on the g5 pawn, which at the moment is protected by the pawn. But you can imagine that if this f6 pawn goes away, then queen takes g5 is a real threat. And this, even a sacrifice of the rook on f6 may come to mind at some point. And I, to be honest, when I was playing this game, I got really scared at this point. It's natural to feel afraid when you are under such tremendous pressure. Okay, what do you do? So I played rook h6. I also want to double my rooks. I want to double my rooks on the h-file, but I'm also overprotecting the pawn on f6, which is such a key center of my pillar of my defense of the king. And white sacrifices another pawn, putting even more pressure on my f6 pawn. But also this move opens the bishop, which now becomes a monster of the diagonal. It's a nice move. I like this pawn sacrifice by white. I think that this was a very good move to be played. So what do you do? How do you deal with all this pressure coming upon you? Well, I couldn't see a good defense against all those threats. And I also decided at this point, you know, the best defense is the attack. So how can we do it? Doubling the rooks on the h-file. This move is really burning all the bridges. You are just going, okay, please white, carry on your attack. I will try to carry out my attack, and let's see whose attack comes first. There is no going back from now on. All right, white takes with a check. I go with my king to f8, and the queen goes to g5 as was intended all along. What do you do next? Now it seems like black might be mated pretty soon with all those threats coming. But now, for a moment, we have time to go with our attack. And I took this chance immediately. Rook h2 check. King goes to g1. And now I play the move knight to h5 check, threatening the check. Actually, this would be a very funny checkmate on f3 if you notice, if my knight is allowed to jump there, because the rook is now pinned, cannot move. It would be a very beautiful checkmate. But first of all, white did not allow me to do it. And second of all, this move was a mistake. I should have probably continued with giving checks with my rooks, bring the other rook in, and only then try to use the knight from e5. Fortunately for me, black didn't see it and made the move queen to f5. Yes, this move covers the f3 square, so I can no longer give a checkmate, this funny checkmate with the knight. But now I have another checkmate, as you will see. The correct defense was to put the bishop onto e4, bringing it to the game and covering the f3 square that way. I would still be much better, probably still winning, but I wouldn't have given a checkmate as I have in the game. So let's have a look at this finish. Rook h1, check. King goes to g2. The other rook comes in, check. Now the king has only one square to go, which is to go to g3. Now you bring the queen in, check. White covers with the rook, and now you may be tempted. I can just win the exchange, taking the rook with the knight, and I will be up the exchange. But that would be a mistake, because there is something better. There is a checkmate, as you will see in a moment, but also this gives white some possibilities, maybe to come with the queen here, give some checks. You know, things are still not clear if I just grab the rook. There is no need to, because we have a checkmate. So in this position, how would you give the checkmate? Can you see it? Well, you start by giving the check with the rook. King goes back to g2, and now mate in 1. Rook from 1 to h2, checkmate. Please notice that the queen covers g1 square and there is no escape. And Ian was kind enough to allow me to execute this checkmate on the board. A nice idea against the Smith-Morra. So once again, just to recap, the Smith-Morra gambit is when white plays d4 and then plays c3, so offers, gives up the pawn for a quick attack. And the idea that I just wanted to recommend here is to push the pawn to d3. And then after a normal development, what we get is a position that is like a typical Sicilian position instead of all of this Smith-Morra nonsense. So if you like this way of playing, please let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.